From the CISO series, it's Cybersecurity Headlines.
Hacking phones with Celebrite. What does that mean? The love-hate affair with Flock. A new storm brewing with Codecup and hacking pacemakers? Well, these are some of the stories that we have brought to you this week on the daily editions of the Security Headlines podcast, Cybersecurity Headlines podcast, that is. And now we're getting a chance for some insight, some opinion, and some expertise on these stories and more from our guest, who this week is George Finney, who is CISO at Southern Methodist University, and a whole lot more. George, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. It's awesome to be here.
Well, it's a real pleasure to have you as well, and I'll say that for a number of reasons. I mean, we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff here today, and one of the key things that fascinates me is that artwork in the background. You are an author as a CISO as well, and then this groovy artwork you have in the background. Do you want to just tell us just a little bit about that as we start?
Optimus behind me is mine. I can't claim Voltron. I've got my own version of Voltron, but for some reason, a couple years ago, I started doing spray paint pop art robots. And my wife lets me put them up in the house, so it's been fun. I kind of work out my my creative energies when I'm not working on a book or not working in my other creative endeavors.
Exactly. And so this is, just fascinating stuff because, I mean, you are a CISO at Southern Methodist University as well. And you've also written a book, which we're going to speak about towards the end here, which I think is vital for anybody who's in this area, whether as a CISO or as a manager, to understand as well. And I want to make sure we cover that. And as we go through our session today, it's important that I recommend that we pay attention to a couple of other things here. Our sponsor for this week, which is Palo Alto Networks, and I'll be speaking about them very shortly as well. If you are joining us live right now, I invite you to join us on Crowdcast if you're not already there, where you can participate. Make some comments, make some noise, tell us what you're thinking, and we will keep tabs on your comments and acknowledge them during the show as well. And not only now, but also tomorrow, we have one of our regular CISO video chats on Friday, CISO series video chats on Friday. This one is called Hacking Distractions, and it looks to be really good because it has two equally weighted sides about distractions that everyone needs to know about. So again, while you're there at Crowdcast, register for tomorrow for the CISO series video chats. You'll see on the register for video chats button right there. So George, we have just about 20 minutes now to get through some of these stories. And I want to start with Codecup, which is a concept that is sort of taking its place kind of chronologically behind SolarWinds here, disclosing a 2.5-month long supply chain attack. It started out as an announcement that a threat actor had breached the platform and added some credentials to a bash uploader, but it has now expanded to reveal some of the customers that have been potentially affected or affected, including GoDaddy, Atlassian, the Washington Post, and Procter & Gamble. So does this look like, from your perspective, another supply chain attack paired perhaps with another repository failure? What do you make of this?
I think it's still pretty early on. I know we're going to learn a lot more in the coming days and weeks. What I'm most interested in is hearing if any of the stolen credentials that were captured in the breach and harvested were actually reused within those customers, right? So if those credentials weren't, then maybe it's not a big deal. If they were, obviously it's a huge issue. But it definitely seems like 2021 is going to be the year that people remember that threat actors turn their attention to our supply chain, and certainly security vendors and code repositories are definitely on the front lines. And in security, I think our focus has been so much on SSNs and credit card numbers as our crown jewels, but SolarWinds and Codecup are reminding us that the code is the crown where those jewels fit into.
Very nicely put. Yeah, and it does seem that way, that it has emerged more and more, that the supply chain concepts, perhaps it's just simply the evolution of the sophistication of the bad people at finding new targets. But some of these things do have long tails in terms of how long they have been hidden, as we know. So yeah, worth looking at, and perhaps again just being aware of this as a significant component for paying attention and budget dollars to as well. So our second story this week is it's a BGP leak. And this was a very brief thing that happened this week on April 16th, actually, a border gateway protocol routing leak that happened to Vodafone, and they're an autonomous network based in India. So it was very local in terms of its occurrence, but it did impact a number of U.S. companies, including Google. And even though it lasted for just about 10 minutes, the key thing about it was these BGP leaks tend to lead users to have their internet traffic moved to routes with either suboptimal performance, which may be vital, but also ones that maybe are more prone to piracy activities or just simply eavesdropping and traffic analysis. So this is not something that seems to pop up a lot in terms of headlines and stories. How much preparation do you think a company should do to protect itself against this specific type of incident, or is it already standard practice?
I would say first, not every company has their own BGP autonomous system number, so you have to be a larger organization to have that,
Okay.
or maybe an ISP. But if you're going to use BGP, you've got to do it right. But really, I think it is a best practice, right? Just like with any other networking, you need anti-spoofing controls in place to prevent this from happening. But we do that with email, with DKIM, and other technologies. So this, getting into my book a little bit, but I would say that skepticism is one of the habits that you've got to develop, and this is just an implementation of one of those habits.
Right, and developing skepticism and then keeping it alive, keeping it hot, I think is a problem that people often have, is that complacency or comfort or just simply, again, other distractions tend to come along to push these things to the side. So, would you imagine a situation where you've got to have some sort of like a football huddle to go around and talk about these various kinds of things and just keep them to front of mind, or is it just a matter of business the way we handle it right now?
I would say everyone has their own strength when it comes to cybersecurity habits, and so certain people tend to play that canary in the coal mine kind of role where you're the skeptic.
Right.
So I think speaking truth to power is really the issue there, right? You've got to learn to hear the skeptics and not take it personally, and figure out a way to build that into your processes and practices.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's look at WordPress now, because they are saying that Flock is a security concern. This is Google's new third-party cookie alternative, the federated learning of cohorts, which always sounds to me like a Star Trek group. I really love the concept, but it is a blocking technology that, starting with they want to sort of start. They're worried about its situation, that it's enabling a situation where site owners will accept it without fully realizing what Flock is storing and collecting. So now, is this particular thing a case of being overly cautious by rejecting this concept? Is it a matter of industry competitiveness, with WordPress being a major player in the website business? Or is it just simply that we've moved into a greater state of flux regarding the tracking of user activities?
In some ways, I think definitely WordPress is a competitor to Google, with the blogging site. But I think tech companies, not just Google, but a lot of them have lost quite a bit of trust with users when it comes to privacy. So I think the caution is well deserved here, and it seems like they're trying to come up with a way to do. Google is trying to come up with a way to do anonymized cookies, which again, it seems interesting, but it doesn't feel very well fleshed out. And yeah, I think there are a lot of issues with cookies historically that we want to start overcoming.
Yeah, so it is an evolution then. We're still as work in progress with everybody's identity and data at stake, perhaps. So this again, Flock has been sort of making the headlines for quite a while now. So obviously, it's going to be a bit of a battle between these industry titans. So bringing things around to something a little bit more local and a little bit more mortal, we've got Medtonic, which is a company that. It's partnering up with Sternum on pacemaker security. And this is kind of fascinating in the sense that they're looking to partner up to prevent pacemakers from getting hacked through their internet-based software updating systems. Medtonic's previous solution was to simply disconnect the pacemakers from the updating system, but this is not sufficient anymore. So they're looking to try and create an autonomous approach to not just simply mitigate risk to patients, but also to prevent pacemakers from being used as an attack vector on medical systems overall on the networks. So, it's not intending to laugh at this in any way, just to simply say it's so bizarre and scary at the same time. Is this an area where the public and physicians should become, again, more proactive in terms of all types of medical technologies, in terms of this potential to spread, especially given how busy they are right now? What's your take on this?
First, I had to read the headline a couple of times because, Sternum is the name of the cybersecurity startup, but they're working with pacemakers. That it seems like the pacemaker company should be named Sternum, but
Yes,
sorry,
indeed.
bad joke. I mean, what Sternum's doing, I think it's interesting they're not calling it antivirus, which, has its own baggage, and maybe that seems creepy on a health device. But yeah, I mean, I worry a lot about medical devices like insulin pumps or pacemakers. And really what Sternum seems to be offering here is like an EDR tool for those devices, which, I think we need to do something, and maybe it's the right direction. But no, I think doctors are in a great position to hold medical device companies accountable to produce more secure devices, right? It's unacceptable to have a medical device get hacked at all. I mean, I think we should have zero tolerance for that. So, sure, running antivirus, seems like a good fit right now, but, making those products, more secure in general is the best path. And Sternum, I'm sorry, I'm going to make another joke, but it seems like a Band-Aid.
Absolutely. Well, you're getting to the heart of the matter there, and that's what counts. So it's, you're very right. I mean, I like the idea of it being a zero tolerance policy because we tend to place as much faith in these technologies as we would with our doorbell, our smart doorbell, that they're supposed to work and they're supposed to work in the right way. So great insight on that. I'm just going to take a moment here to pause and acknowledge our sponsor for today. Our sponsor for today is Palo Alto Networks. In Latin, the word spectrum means image, and Spectrum also happens to be a cloud security event that's all about container images and CI/CD pipeline security, cloud transformation strategies, and much more. So we're inviting you to join Prisma Cloud by Palo Alto Networks on April 27th for a virtual event covering all things cloud security. You can learn more at go.paloaltonetworks.com/spectrum. And it looks like it's going to be a very interesting event. So back now to our stories. We've got the Biden administration unveiling a plan to defend the electric sector from cyber attacks. This is a particular pet interest of mine. I'm quite fascinated by it. So they're announcing a 100-day plan to help owners and operators develop a more comprehensive approaches to detection mitigation. And this will focus on getting ICS, industrial control system, people in charge of their things as well. So we saw in Texas a couple of months ago what happens when the endpoints get affected. But when we have 50 or maybe 51 states, each with differing approaches to their grid, do you see this, and with so many private sector operators on the endpoints, do you think this plan would need a little bit more teeth to make this actually work collectively?
Well, y'all know I live in Texas, and my power was out for 4 days, right? I maybe had 2 or 3 hours of power for over the course of 4 days. Half of my neighbors had flood or other kinds of damage to their homes because of the power outages. And we're talking over $100 billion in damages. People were without, clean drinking water. Some people actually died. And the worst part was really you had nowhere to go to escape, right? So, from that perspective, we absolutely have to get the power grid security right? A successful cyber attack against our overall power grid as a country could potentially cost trillions and hurt people everywhere. So,
Right.
Absolutely has to have teeth. People have to get on board. And I not to say I know those. The folks in the power grid industry have been working hard already, but I think we need to continue making very fast progress.
Yeah, it seems to be. It's very, very hard to pull people together with disparate opinions, but perhaps we can remember what happened in Texas and elsewhere. when these things do tend to get a little bit misconstrued with regards to their purpose, so whether it's a profit center or a piece of the grid. So you know what? Hearing I uh, wow, how about that? That is our alert for getting into the lightning round already. We have so much fun just talking here together. So I'm going to speed things up a little bit for the second half here. Pulse Secure. VPN Zero Day used to hack defense firms and government organizations, and they have shared some mitigation measures for a zero-day vulnerability in VPN appliance activity that was exploited against U.S. defense networks. It had a 10 out of 10 severity score, and according to Andrew Ginter, who is a journalist and expert, he says that this means that two-factor and multi-factor authentication is no longer a silver bullet, and he's calling for unidirectional security gateways. So I'm looking for your thoughts regarding the severity of this from your perspective and experience.
And anytime you hear the words authentication bypass, that's horrific, right? And the threat actor in this case is going to be impossible to remove from your networks. And I think they had 24,000 VPN customers across the world. So yeah, terrible. Those folks are really going to be digging out of that for a long time.
Well, it looks like we need to shake them up, or at least, and I don't mean that in sort of a sarcastic way, but just again, just when you hit 10 out of 10, I mean, there's something serious going on that people need to be to bring to the forefront. So, in our lightning round here, just going to something that's a bit more closer to home for you, perhaps, the University of Minnesota being banned from submitting Linux kernels. This was a project that the Linux kernel project maintainers imposed a ban from the Golden Gophers after it was discovered that they had submitted a series of malicious code commits as part of their research activities. This was basically a term paper, really. So anything coming from a umn.edu email is now going to be banned. So speaking as a specialist, obviously from the university sector, is this an adequate precautionary measure, or are they moving into a bit of cancel culture here?
I actually think this is a measured response, right? Universities benefit from appearing to support the open source community. Cybersecurity and computer science are two of the hottest degrees right now. So, I think the university, definitely put their stamp of approval because the IRB review board in this case, let it go ahead. But frankly, from my perspective, I think the researcher's getting off a little light here, right? I think again, there could be potential criminal implications because of trying to inject malware into the Linux kernel.
Right.
So I think the maintainers going after the university instead of the researcher is probably a measured response.
Okay. All right. So let's look now at Celebrite. And the Signal founder examines a Celebrite device. As the blog post Moxie Marlinspike published details about how devices from the phone unlocking company Celebrite work and how these devices have numerous vulnerabilities. He found the devices lacked, again, exploit mitigation defenses and could easily have innocuous files moved in that could tamper with the device. So he said he's going to share all the vulnerabilities details about this if Celebrite discloses the bugs. So there looks like second law of SCADA striking again here in terms of being that everything can be hacked somehow. And again, it's a threat to Celebrite, and it's at least perhaps a threat to the sanctity of phones themselves, and perhaps even to the the hacking culture. So any thoughts or observations about what's unfolding here? It seems pretty serious.
In December, Celebrite themselves announced that they could access the secure messages from the Signal app on cell phones. So this is a kind of a response from Moxie Marlinspike's perspective, but I would say, oh my gosh, I mean, if Celebrite really has that many vulnerabilities, they've really got to step up and do something about that. Law enforcement relies on them
Right.
for investigations, and criminal prosecutions rely on that evidence. So they've got to fix their problems and
There's
fast.
some heavy stakes. Yeah, exactly. If criminal prosecutions are relying on this evidence, yeah, it puts some real depth to this. So last story and real fast response to this one. We got Facebook once again looking to normalize the mass scraping of personal data. They had this big thing just recently, about 500 million Facebook users' phone numbers released and leaked. So there was an internal email that was accidentally sent by a Facebook representative to a journalist, which has been independently confirmed, that says that Facebook's long-term plan is to anticipate more scraping incidents and frame them as a broad industry issue, basically normalizing that this just happens. So it's shrug our shoulders. Hey, this happens. So, George, should this be normalized? Is that cool?
Definitely not cool, man. I have this theory that Facebook won out over MySpace back in the day, in part because MySpace just looked like it was not a safe place to be. And I think people are dropping Facebook. The next generation of kids out there don't trust Facebook, and rightly so. And this leaked memo, definitely seems to suggest that they don't take privacy seriously.
Amazing. Very interesting. Yeah. Well, this has been fascinating and like real fast as well. So my question to you now is which of these stories is your particular favorite? A thumbs up or an eye roll? What sticks out for you here?
I would say the University of Minnesota, that's definitely got my the facepalm award. That definitely seemed like an avoidable situation. They could have reached out and worked with the community. And let them know and got their permission rather than wasting the time of volunteers that were reviewing code that's really for an experiment. And frankly, I actually read that paper prepared for today, and the experiment they did wasn't necessary for the paper they wrote. They don't really reference the results of that experiment much at all. Seems like it could have been avoided.
Interesting. Wow, that is fantastic. Well, it's been a real pleasure, basically plumbing the depths of your experience and knowledge here. And of course, we want to take a moment here and plug your book. Do you want to just describe it very briefly for us?
Yeah, so it's called Well Aware: Master the 9 Cybersecurity Habits to Protect Your Future. I wrote the book, both for cybersecurity practitioners as well as for non-technical business folks, and kind of to help build a bridge for us to help cybersecurity folks, talk to non-technical folks and give them something like the 7 habits of highly effective people for a CFO or a VP to read and understand, because I think for anyone's career, cybersecurity is going to determine whether you get that next job or whether you get that next promotion.
Yes.
Particularly on the business side, when you know that CEOs are being fired for not getting cybersecurity right.
Yes.
And I think we all need to work together, but we also know that the way to change behaviors is through habits. And so focusing on, the success stories of successful leaders who've done great things, I think is the way to change and improve our security cultures across the board.
Absolutely. Well, George Finney, CISO of Southern Methodist University, author and really amazing artist. It's been a great pleasure working with you this evening, and thank you so much for being here and giving us your wisdom. So we look forward to talking to you again. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Steve.
So that's it for another episode. And I want to just remind you that tomorrow, as I said at the outset here, we have another great video chat coming up, Hacking Distractions. Go to CISOseries.com and sign up through the Register for Video Chats button. It's going to be an amazing chat, as it always is. And we'll be back every day next week, every weekday, with a 6-minute podcast of the news you need to know in the Cybersecurity Headlines podcast. Please join us and subscribe if you love it. I will be back here next week, so thank you very much for listening and participating, and stay safe. Take care.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOseries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.